Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're all doing okay. Had a decent week.
Yeah, hopefully a bit quieter than the story we're diving into today.
Definitely. And look, if you're the kind of person who gets really pulled into gripping book discussions, especially ones with just completely wild plot twists,
Which this one certainly has, in spades.
then you should really hit that subscribe button. We drop new deep dives every single Friday, right on your favorite podcast platform.
That's right. But just a reminder, if you want the full library, all the older episodes, the only place to find that complete back catalog is on YouTube.
Exactly. So, okay, today we are getting into something pretty intense. We're focusing on Vincent Bugliosi's Helter Skelter, the true story of the Manson murders.
And it's written, of course, by the prosecutor who actually tried the case. So it's a unique viewpoint.
It really is. It's not just like a recounting of events. Bugliosi gives you this incredibly detailed, almost forensic look at the crimes, the investigation.
And frankly, the absolute mess the investigation was in at the start.
Yeah, the chaos, the panic, and how it sort of exposed these cracks in society, you know? It's heavy stuff.
It is. And Bugliosi's challenge, which he lays out, was immense. He had to prove not just who did it, but why. He had to make this bizarre, racist cult motive that Helter Skelter makes sense to a jury.
So that's our focus today. How did they go from total confusion and, frankly, some real police incompetence
Which Bugliosi doesn't shy away from detailing.
to actually getting convictions? We need to unpack the sheer savagery of the murders, the initial fumbles, and how this motive, based on a misinterpretation of a Beatles album, became the key.
It's a chilling look at how thin that line can be between, I guess, counterculture and deadly conspiracy.
Okay, let's start. Part 1, CeeLo Drive, the morning of August 9th, 1969.
Right. The first person on the scene, really understanding something was terribly wrong, was the housekeeper, Winifred Chapman. She walked into. Well, it wasn't a simple robbery.
No. The first victim they actually found was outside the house, Stephen Parent, just 18 years old.
Yeah, he was in his car, a white Rambler, apparently just leaving after visiting someone who lived in the guest house. An innocent bystander, basically.
Shot 4 times. Bugliosi really paints this picture, doesn't he? This young guy, covered in blood, in his car. And then this, like, eerie quiet hanging over the main house up the hill.
A really menacing image. And as the first officers moved up towards the house, the horror just escalated. About 25 feet from the car, they found another body on the lawn.
Abigail Folger,
Okay.
found in her nightgown. The description in the book is just graphic. Soaked in blood, dozens of stab wounds.
And Bugliosi mentions this strange quiet again. Like this absolute frenzy of violence had happened, and then silence. It's unsettling.
Inside the house, it got even worse. Jay Sebring, the famous hairstylist.
Right, he was found in the living room, hands tied with rope, dozens and dozens of puncture wounds all over his torso, his limbs, and he'd been shot once too.
The sheer overkill, you know, it suggests something personal, maybe, or just completely detached, like ticking off boxes.
Or programmed. And then, of course, Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant.
The details are just heartbreaking. Bugliosi recounts how she was found hanged from a beam in the living room, rope connecting her to Sebring's body nearby.
It is a deputy coroner, John Finken, who had the awful task of cutting the rope. Later testimony, mainly from Susan Atkins, revealed Tate begged for her baby's life.
Met with that chilling response, "Look, bitch, I have no mercy for you. Just inhuman."
And we also have Wojtek Frykowski. He seems to have put up the biggest fight.
Definitely. The autopsy details are horrific. Shot twice, hit over the head 13 times, so violently the gun butt actually broke and stabbed 51 times.
51. It wasn't quick. The struggle clearly moved from inside the house out onto the lawn. Sustained, brutal violence.
And then there are the messages, the things that immediately made this different. The word pig printed on the front door.
Written in Sharon Tate's blood. That was the first real clue, the first signature that this wasn't about money or drugs. It was something else entirely.
But that symbolic clue, that potential lead, was almost immediately compromised, wasn't it, by how the scene was handled?
Oh, absolutely. Bugliosi is scathing about the initial LAPD response. He details several critical errors in just basic crime scene procedure. It's actually shocking how quickly things got contaminated.
Like the glasses, the horn-rimmed glasses.
Exactly. First seen near some trunks, then somehow they ended up 6 feet away on top of a desk. Nobody knows how.
And the pieces of the gun grip found near the entryway?
Yeah, the report apparently said they were kicked under the chair by one of the original officers. Kicked. No one ever owned up to it.
That's unbelievable, that kind of negligence. It messes everything up, doesn't it? Potential fingerprints, the exact position of evidence.
Completely. Bugliosi notes that out of 50 latent prints they lifted, only about half were even usable. And initially, they couldn't match any of them. Every mistake like that just makes solving the case harder.
So with this mess, what were the cops thinking initially? What were the first theories?
Well, they kind of bounced around. First, maybe a burglary that went violently wrong. But that seemed unlikely. Apparently, the only thing noted as missing was maybe a camera tripod, which felt trivial given the carnage.
Right. Theory 2. A drug deal gone bad. A drug burn.
That seemed more plausible at first glance. They found cocaine in Jay Sebring's Porsche. And Frykowski was known to be involved in the drug scene, getting stuff like MDA.
MDA, that's like a heavy psychedelic, right?
Yeah, methylene dioxyamphetamine. He apparently got it from a guy named Larry Madigan. Plus, the phone lines being cut suggested planning, maybe targeting the people inside specifically.
But still, the level of violence, the stabbing frenzy, the word pig,
Yeah.
it didn't quite fit a typical drug hit, did it?
No, it felt different, ritualistic almost. And that, combined with the victim's fame, set off immediate panic, especially in Hollywood.
Bugliosi includes that quote, right, about the toilets flushing all over Beverly Hills.
Yes. Toilets are flushing all over Beverly Hills. The entire Los Angeles sewer system is getting rid of evidence. People were terrified they'd be next, especially if they had any connection, however tenuous, to drugs or the victims.
And some people were apparently trying to clean things up themselves, like Steve McQueen's friend suggesting they remove drugs from Sebring's house.
Exactly. Trying to protect Sebring's image or maybe their own connections. But from an investigative standpoint, it's disastrous. It just muddies the water even more when the police are already struggling.
So the initial phase was just chaos. Red herrings, contaminated evidence, and widespread panic.
Pretty much. A perfect storm of confusion.
Okay, before we get to the second set of murders, which happened terrifyingly quickly after the first, Bugliosi takes time to really flesh out the victims from Cielo Drive. And it's important, right? They weren't just names.
Absolutely. He wants you to see them as real people, complex individuals caught in this nightmare. It makes the motive, when we get to it, even more jarring.
Take Sharon Tate. Her film career was just taking off, and there's that weirdly eerie coincidence with her roles.
Yeah, like an Eye of the Devil. She played this young woman with sort of witchy powers, and the plot involved David Niven's character being targeted by this hooded cult doing ritual sacrifices. It's chilling looking back.
And the book mentions this detail about her pregnancy and telling Roman Polanski that she waited until it was too late to abort?
It does. It hints at maybe some underlying insecurity in the relationship, perhaps worries about his lifestyle, maybe hoping the baby would solidify things. It just adds another layer of tragedy to her murder, especially being pregnant.
And Jay Sebring, the image versus the reality.
Right. Publicly, he was this cool, successful celebrity hairstylist, but Bugliosi, citing sources, portrays him as quite a lonely, troubled man.
And that detail about his house, the one he bought deliberately knowing it was considered jinxed.
Yeah, it was the former home of Jean Harlow, where her husband Paul Byrne had killed himself. It's a strange detail. Maybe suggests a fascination with the darker side of fame or something. Hard to say.
Then Abigail Folger, the coffee heiress. Not just some socialite.
No, definitely not. Radcliffe graduate with honors. But she was clearly struggling, seeing the psychiatrist 5 days a week.
Wow, 5 days.
Yeah, and involved in heavy drug use, apparently past just experimenting. The book says she was trying to get the courage to leave Frykowski. These are people with their own serious problems, already kind of vulnerable, before this horror crashed into their lives.
It makes what happened next, just 24 hours later, even more terrifying because it seems so random. The LaBianca murders, August 10th, 1969.
And the headlines immediately link them. Second ritual killings here. That just amplified the fear across L.A. because the LaBiancas, Leno and Rosemary, they weren't Hollywood figures.
Right. They were successful business owners. Rosemary had a boutique. Leno owned a chain of supermarkets. Just seemingly normal, prosperous, middle-class people living on Waverly Drive.
Which made it scarier for the average person. It wasn't just the rich and famous anymore. And Rosemary had apparently felt uneasy before.
Oh, yeah, that quote about feeling someone was coming into their house.
Exactly. Telling a friend, someone is coming in our house while we're away. Saying things felt disturbed, the dogs were outside when they should have been in. A really chilling premonition.
And the scene itself, it was even more grotesque somehow. More symbolic, maybe.
Definitely more symbolic, or at least the messages were clearer. Leno LaBianca was found with a lamp cord around his neck, hands tied behind his back.
And the fork The carving fork sticking out of his stomach?
Yes, an ivory handle carving fork, and then carved into his stomach the word war.
Just horrific. And rosemary.
Multiple stab wounds.
Yeah.
Equally savage. Found in the bedroom.
And this time, the message left was even more specific, wasn't it?
Yes. On the refrigerator door, written in blood. Helter Skelter! Misspelled.
Or Skelter. That misspelling is key, right? Another layer of weirdness, but it directly links the two scenes in a way Pig didn't quite. It cemented the idea of a connection.
Absolutely. Now, the police knew, or strongly suspected, they were dealing with the same killers, driven by some kind of bizarre shared motive. But Bugliosi points out another investigative issue here.
With the La Bianca scene, what was that?
The initial assumption by the police was that only one weapon, likely a bayonet, was used on both Lino and Rosemary.
Okay. And that was wrong.
Well, the problem was it was an assumption made without proper measurement of the wounds at the scene. Unlike Dr. Noguchi had done at the Tate house, they just kind of eyeballed it and decided it looked like one weapon.
So another potential piece of evidence, the distinct characteristics of different weapons might have been overlooked or confused from the start.
Exactly. It's another example of how small procedural lapses could have, and maybe did, complicate things down the line when trying to match weapons to suspects.
So for months, the police have these two incredibly brutal, bizarre crime scenes. Cielo Drive and Waverly Drive, linked by bloody messages but seemingly random victims and no clear suspects. How did they finally break it open?
The first real crack came from an earlier, separate murder investigation, the killing of a man named Gary Hinman in July '69.
Right, Hinman. He was also connected to Manson, wasn't he? Musician, maybe some drug stuff involved.
Yeah, and the scene had some similarities. Hinman was stabbed, part of his ear was cut off, and the word political piggy was written on the wall in his blood. Police arrested a Manson family member, Bobby Beausoleil, for that crime.
Okay, so Beausoleil's arrest puts the family on the radar for a murder, but not Tate LaBianca yet.
Not directly. The real breakthrough came from inside jail. Specifically, the Sybil Brand Institute, the women's detention center in L.A.
Susan Atkins. Sadie Miglets.
Exactly. She was booked there in connection with the Hinman murder. And apparently she just couldn't keep her mouth shut. She started bragging to other inmates.
Bragging about the Tate murders.
Yes, to two inmates in particular, Ronnie Howard and Virginia Graham. Atkins was, I guess, trying to seem important, terrifying maybe. She talked about their leader, Charlie.
Manson.
Right. She described him as someone who'd been in prison but could never be broken. And she talked about his plan for the family.
Hole in Death Valley.
Yeah, this secret place, supposedly an ancient city deep underground that only Charlie knew about, where they'd hide out during the coming apocalypse he predicted.
And did she give specifics about Tate?
Oh, absolutely chilling specifics. She apparently told Virginia Graham, pointing to herself, "You know who did the Tate murders? Well, you're looking at her."
Wow.
She said there were 4 of them that night, herself, 2 other girls, and a man. She confirmed the man cut the phone wires, said they killed Stephen Parent first because he saw them.
And the quote about Sharon Tate.
That came out too.
Yeah.
Admitting she stabbed Tate, telling her, "Look, bitch, I have no mercy for you." The level of detail was stunning. Coming from someone already implicated in the Hinman murder, it had to be taken seriously.
You'd think that would blow the case wide open immediately.
You would. But remember, this is jailhouse testimony. Police are often skeptical of inmates trying to get deals or attention. And there was still this disconnect, this lack of communication, Bugliosi highlights.
Between different police departments.
Yeah. Well, and just slow processing. But corroboration started coming from another source, bikers. Specifically, members of the Straight Satan's motorcycle club who had hung around Spawn Ranch where the family lived.
Okay, what did they say?
A guy named Al Springer told investigators that Manson himself had bragged to him just days after the murders, around August 11th or 12th.
Bragged about what?
Springer said Manson told him, "We knocked off 5 of them just the other night." He wasn't sure if Manson said people, or maybe pigs, or rich pigs, but the number 5, right after the Tate murders. It was a direct confession from Manson.
Still, maybe biker talk, maybe exaggeration. Did they get anything more concrete?
Yes, from another straight Satan named Danny DiCarlo. He knew the family well, apparently even cleaned their guns sometimes. He provided crucial physical links.
Like what?
3 things. First, he described the specific type of 3-strand nylon rope the family used, the same kind found tying up Tate and Sebring. Second, he identified a specific gun Manson often carried, a high-standard .22 caliber Longhorn revolver.
Was that significant?
Very. Because Manson had apparently bragged about using that exact type of gun in another shooting incident. And third, DiCarlo confirmed the family had recently bought a bunch of buck knives, maybe 10 or 12, the same kind of knives used in the murders.
Okay, so now you have Atkins's confession, Manson's bragging, and physical details about ropes, guns, and knives all pointing to the family. Things must have moved fast then.
This is where Bugliosi gets really frustrated in the book. The information was there, but the coordination wasn't. The sheriff's office, LA's handling Hinman and Beausoleil, had info from another family associate, Kitty Lusinger, linking the family to the Tate murders as early as mid-October. They told LAPD.
And LAPD jumped right on it.
No, that's the maddening part. Bugliosi says LAPD didn't even interview Kitty Lusinger, this key informant, until October 31st, 11 days later.
11 days, when they potentially had the solution to the biggest murder case in the city.
Exactly. He points out the physical distance between the headquarters was tiny, like 4 blocks. He blames bureaucratic inertia, maybe some interdepartmental rivalry between the sheriff and LAPD.
So crucial time was lost. Evidence could have been destroyed, suspects could scatter.
Absolutely. Bugliosi argues this delay made the eventual prosecution vastly more complicated than it needed to be. It allowed Manson and the others more time at Spawn Ranch, potentially getting rid of evidence. It's a major point of criticism in his account.
Okay, so the investigation eventually starts zeroing in on Manson and the family. But to convict them, especially Manson, who wasn't physically present at Cielo Drive, Bugliosi needed to prove why. He needed to establish the motive. And that leads us to Helter Skelter.
Which is just one of the most bizarre motives in criminal history.
But first, you have to understand Manson himself. Bugliosi digs into his background quite a bit.
Yeah, born no-name Maddox in 1934. A life pretty much spent in institutions from a young age.
First armed robbery at 13. Spent years in reform schools, prisons. Had an IQ tested at 109, so above average intelligence, but functionally illiterate.
Trying to escape institutions multiple times, had a couple of short-lived marriages, kids. Right. And crucially, while in prison later on, he got deeply into 2 things. Music. He desperately wanted to be a rock star. And studying Scientology.
Scientology, how did that play in?
Well, he seemed to pick up some of its concepts and terminology about clearing the mind, achieving a higher state. Stuff he later twisted to manipulate his followers. He saw himself as this profound guru, I think.
And this manipulation, this control over the family, the defense later tried to paint it as some kind of hypnotic spell, right? Like they weren't responsible.
Exactly. But Bugliosi argues very forcefully that it wasn't magic. It was calculated psychological programming. He used everything at his disposal.
Sex, for one?
Definitely. He orchestrated group sex, broke down all inhibitions, controlled relationships. Sources even describe him abusing minors within the group. It was about total control and breaking down individual identity.
And drugs. LSD especially.
Yes. He didn't just hand it out freely. He'd ration it, use guided trips to instill his philosophy, make people feel they were reaching this state he called theta.
Theta, like the Greek letter.
Yeah, he borrowed the term, possibly from Scientology, to mean this sort of pure receptive state, free from society's programming. Once you were theta, you were ready to accept his programming, his truth.
And if you didn't comply...
There was abuse. Emotional, physical. Diane Lake, who joined when she was just 13 or 14, described being beaten by Manson for not being submissive enough. His philosophy, according to another member, Paul Watkins, was basically Charles's will is man's son. His will was absolute, divine even.
Linda Kasabian, who became the key witness, described feeling programmed, didn't she?
I did. She talked about this strange experience, like being possessed after being intimate with Tex Watson, another key family member. Yeah. It shows the level of psychological manipulation. They felt like they were losing their own will.
So all this control, this programming, it leads to Helter Skelter, the motive, which came from the Beatles.
Unbelievably, yes.
Yeah.
Specifically their 1968 self-titled album, usually called the White Album. Manson became obsessed with it, convinced it contained secret, coded messages meant only for him and the family.
Messages about what?
About an impending apocalyptic race war. He twisted the lyrics of songs like Piggies, Blackbird, Revolution 9, and especially the song Helter Skelter.
How did he interpret Helter Skelter? The song's pretty chaotic, noisy.
Exactly. He took that chaos literally. He believed it signified the uprising. He thought the Beatles were telling him that black people, Blackbird Rising, were about to rise up and violently overthrow the white establishment. Piggies.
And Revolution 9, that weird sound collage.
He connected that directly to Revelation 9 in the Bible, the chapter about the abyss opening and locusts emerging. He believed it predicted the chaos and destruction of the race war.
So he thought black people would start a war and kill all the white people?
Basically, yes. except for Manson and his chosen family. They would escape the violence.
Yeah, where did they go?
To that bottomless pit mentioned in Revelation 9, which Manson decided was a secret cave or city hidden deep beneath Death Valley. They'd wait there while the races destroyed each other.
Okay, this is getting truly bizarre. So where do the Tate LaBianca murders fit into this? Why commit those crimes?
That was the catalyst. Manson believed the race war wasn't starting fast enough. The Beatles had predicted it, but black people weren't rising up as expected. So he decided the family had to kickstart it.
How? By killing white people. That seems counterintuitive if you wanted black people to win.
But the plan was more insidious. The murders were designed as copycat crimes. By brutally murdering wealthy white people, the piggies, in their homes and leaving messages like pig and helter skelter, which he thought related to the uprising, he intended it to look like black militants, like the Black Panthers maybe, were responsible.
So frame black people to incite white people into a race war.
Precisely. He thought these horrific murders would terrify white society, create paranoia, and ignite a violent backlash against black communities. This would force the race war Helter Skelter to begin.
And then what? After the war? After everyone else is gone?
This is the peak of his delusion. He believed that black people, having won the war but being inherently incapable of running the world, his racist view, would then realize they needed a leader. They would come to the hole in Death Valley, find Manson and the family, and beg Charlie to take over and rule the world.
Wow. So the entire thing was driven by this incredibly convoluted racist fantasy of ultimately gaining total power.
Yes. Rooted in his own paranoia, his failed music career, he resented the establishment that rejected him, and this twisted interpretation of pop culture and religion. Bugliosi's challenge was proving to a jury that this insane delusion was the actual calculated motive behind the murders.
Okay, so Bugliosi has the suspects. He has this unbelievably bizarre motive. Now, he needs to prove it in court, but there's a problem. Susan Atkins, who gave that detailed confession.
She recanted. Once she realized she was facing the death penalty, she clammed up, withdrew her grand jury testimony. It happened.
Which left Bugliosi without his star confessor. He needed someone else from the inside.
Enter Linda Kasabian. She was present during the Tate murders, drove the car for the LaBianca murders, but crucially, she didn't physically participate in the killings themselves.
And she was willing to testify.
Yes, she was terrified. She had fled the Spawn Ranch shortly after the murders because, as she told Bugliosi, Charlie asked the group if they felt any remorse, and she knew she couldn't hide the fact that she did. She feared for her life and her children's lives.
So the prosecution offered her immunity.
Full immunity in exchange for her testimony. It was a controversial decision, maybe, letting someone involved walk free, but Bugliosi saw her as essential. He described her as the one human being among the killers that first night, not one of the heartless, bloodthirsty robots like Atkins, Krenwinkel, and Watson.
And her testimony was powerful.
Absolutely critical. She was the narrative thread. She could place everyone at the scenes. She described seeing Tex Watson cut the phone lines at Cielo Drive. She heard Frykowski screaming for his life on the lawn. She saw Patricia Krenwinkel, Katie, chasing Abigail Folger with a knife.
Details only an eyewitness would know.
Exactly. It filled in the blanks left by the initial police errors and the lack of confessions from the actual killers. She provided the human story connecting the suspects to the crimes.
And was there physical evidence to back her up? Because eyewitness testimony alone can be tricky.
Oh, yes. Crucial physical evidence came through. Probably the most damning piece was Tex Watson's fingerprint.
Found where?
On the front door frame at the Tate residence. A clear, latent print matched to Watson with 18 points of identity.
18? Isn't like 10 or 12 usually enough for a positive ID?
Yes. 18 points is incredibly strong. It definitively placed Watson, one of the main killers, right there at the scene, completely demolishing any attempt to argue he wasn't involved.
What about the weapons? Did they find any?
They found the gun. The high-standard .22 caliber Longhorn revolver that Danny DiCarlo had mentioned.
The one Linda Kasabian said she threw out of the car.
Precisely. An 11-year-old boy, Stephen Weiss, found it in some bushes near Beverly Hills, exactly where Linda described ditching it. Ballistics matched shell casings later found at Spawn Ranch to that specific gun.
Wow. So that ties the murder weapon directly back to the family's home base.
It was a huge link. Gun found where the witness said matches casings from the suspect's ranch. Forensic gold, like you said.
But even with this mounting evidence, Bugliosi still faced frustrations with lost evidence.
Unbelievably, yes. Remember the Helter Skelter message on the LaBianca fridge? Well, investigators found another piece of Helter Skelter evidence back at Spawn Ranch in November 1969.
What was it?
A cabinet door ripped off something with the words "Helter Skelter is coming down fast" painted on it. Direct physical proof of the motive found at their headquarters.
Okay, perfect. That nails the motive connection.
Except it wasn't booked into evidence for 5 months.
5 months? Why?
Apparently, the detectives who found it just thought it was unimportant graffiti and set it aside. Bugliosi writes about nearly groaning out loud in court when this vital piece of evidence finally surfaced months after he'd been trying to establish the Helter Skelter motive.
That's just mind-boggling incompetence.
It highlights the chaos and maybe the tunnel vision that still plagued parts of the investigation, even late in the game. They weren't connecting the dots on the motive.
So the trial itself, it became a total circus, didn't it?
Oh, completely. Manson made sure of that. He orchestrated constant disruptions. Famously, he shaved his head in protest.
And the girls copied him.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Atkins, Krenwinkel, Van Houten, they all shaved their heads in solidarity. Then Manson carved an X into his forehead.
And they copied that too.
Yep. Carved X's on their foreheads. It was a visual statement. They were X'd out of society, loyal only to Charlie. It played right into the defense attorney's strategy.
Which was the hypnotic spell defense, trying to claim Manson controlled them completely.
Exactly. Attorneys like Irving Kanarek, who represented Manson, and Paul Fitzgerald for Krenwinkel, argued the girls were essentially brainwashed robots, acting solely under Manson's Svengali-like influence. Bugliosi had to counter that by showing they understood, embraced, and willingly participated in the Helter Skelter ideology.
And the family outside the courtroom were still causing trouble.
Absolutely. They were a constant, menacing presence, and they actively tried to obstruct justice. The most glaring example was the attempt on Barbara Hoyt's life.
She was another potential witness, right?
Yes, she had overheard Susan Atkins describing the Tate murders. The family tracked her down in Hawaii where she'd fled and gave her a hamburger laced with a massive dose of LSD, hoping to silence her or make her seem unreliable.
Did it work?
Thankfully, no. She survived, though it was a terrifying experience, and she was still able to testify. It just showed how dangerous and committed the family remained.
And then there was the disappearance of one of the defense attorneys, Ronald Hughes.
Yeah, that was incredibly strange and tragic. Hughes represented Leslie Van Houten. He vanished during a weekend camping trip near Sespe Hot Springs during a flash flood. His body was found months later.
Was it just an accident?
Officially, yes. But rumors have always persisted that maybe he was killed by other family members or associates. Why? Perhaps because he was starting to diverge from the unified defense strategy, maybe considering having Van Houten testify against Manson. It was never proven, but it added another layer of darkness and suspicion to the whole trial saga, especially since 2 other family members, Bruce Davis and Nancy Pittman, surrendered to police shortly after Hughes disappeared, possibly linked.
So reflecting on Bugliosi's Helter Skelter, it's just a monumental piece of work, isn't it? Not just for the crime details, but for documenting the whole process.
Absolutely. Its real strength is that meticulous reconstruction. Taking this incredibly chaotic, frightening, and frankly bizarre series of events and building a coherent, provable case, he had to make sense of the senseless, essentially.
We've talked about the investigative failures early on, the sheer brutality, Manson's manipulative control, the power of Linda Kasabian's testimony.
And the evidence that finally nailed it, the fingerprint, the gun, even that delayed cabinet door confirming the Helter Skelter motive, was real and present at the ranch.
It all leads to this disturbing conclusion. Manson never really took responsibility, did he? That quote he apparently said to Bugliosi.
Right. I am only what you made me. I am only a reflection of you. Trying to shift the blame onto society, the system, everyone but himself.
But the evidence Bugliosi lays out shows something very different. It shows calculation, control, and this horrifyingly specific, violent motive aimed at achieving ultimate power through chaos.
Exactly. It wasn't just random madness. It was orchestrated terror based on a delusion he actively cultivated in his followers.
So turning it over to you listening, what part of this whole saga stands out most? What do you find most shocking or, I don't know, insightful?
Was it the sheer absurdity of the Helter Skelter motive itself? Or maybe the police bungling, like losing that cabinet door for months? Or the psychological tools Manson used, the LSD, the theta concept?
Yeah, we'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Jump into the comments below and let us know. Let's get some real discussion going.
Please do. And if you found this deep dive interesting, please consider liking it, sharing it with someone who might also be fascinated or horrified by this story.
And of course, subscribe so you don't miss our future discussions. Remember to check out YouTube for the full back catalog, too. Join us next week for episode 35, where we'll be tackling a very different kind of journey in Katabasis by R.F. Kuang.
Sounds intriguing. Until then, keep reading, keep thinking.